They say history is written by the victors. But what happens when the victors themselves begin to forget? When the ink of their records dries with lies, omissions, and shadows? The year was 1095. The world trembled on the edge of a holy war. Yet behind the grandeur of banners, the sermons, and the cries of Deus Vult, something darker stirred. At the Council of Clermont, Pope Urban II delivered a speech that would change the course of world history. He claimed it was a call from God, a mission to reclaim the Holy Land, a divine duty to rescue Christians in the East from the so-called infidels. But few ever ask, what else was said behind the cathedral doors? What deals were made in whispers? And what blood was signed beneath the altar? Because buried in a series of obscure papal correspondences and obscure accounts lies a haunting rumor that the Council of Clermont was more than just a rallying cry. It was a pact. One not made in public, but forged in secrecy, sealed with blood, and meant to remain forgotten. Tonight, we uncover the truth that was never meant to survive. The forgotten blood pact of Clermont, and the terrifying promise that launched the First Crusade. The story begins with silence. Not the silence of peace, but of pressure, of schemes, of desperation. By 1095, the papacy was fractured. Urban II was not universally recognized as pope. He was still clawing back power from rival claimants, trying to solidify his authority over the Catholic world. Rome itself was partially controlled by anti-popes. The East had splintered after the Great Schism of 1054, and the Byzantine Empire, once the proud protector of Christendom, was in ruins under constant assault from the Seljuk Turks. Emperor Alexios I Komnenos sent a plea westward, begging for mercenaries. But Urban did not just see a call for help. He saw an opportunity, a path to unify the Latin Church under his name, to redirect Europe's constant infighting outward, and maybe to secure something far greater than land or glory, something eternal. According to the known historical record, Pope Urban gave his famous speech on November 27, 1095, in the open air outside the cathedral in Clermont, France. Chroniclers wrote that he described horrific abuses suffered by Christians in the East: torture, desecration, mass slaughter. He called for knights, peasants, nobles, everyone to take up the cross. But here's where the story begins to fray. There is no exact transcript of the speech. Multiple versions exist, each written years later, differing wildly. Some include apocalyptic warnings. Others emphasize spiritual rewards. Some mention Byzantine aid, others ignore it entirely. And then, there is the letter. Not just one, but several. In 1898, a French scholar discovered a hidden bundle of papal documents in the Abbey of St. Gilles. Among them, a strange and fragmented draft of a message addressed not to all of Christendom, but to a select group of nobles. The text was damaged, torn, but parts were still readable. One line stood out in faded Latin: Et Juravit in sanguine fratrum suorum, translated, and he swore upon the blood of his brothers. Was this metaphor? A flourish? Or was there a literal ritual involved? Multiple eyewitnesses, monks, scribes, travelers, later spoke of a closed gathering the night before Urban's public speech. It was not held in the cathedral. It took place in a stone chapel, long since destroyed, in the hills beyond Clermont. Only 9 men were allowed inside. Urban was one of them. The identities of the others are harder to prove, but some names recur across letters and chronicles. Count Raymond of Toulouse, Bohemond of Taranto, Godfrey of Bouillon, Hugh of Vermandois, all major leaders of the First Crusade, all present in Clermont that week, all destined to become legends. But legend, as we know, often hides the truth. What really happened that night? An anonymous monk from the Abbey of Moissac, writing in the early 1100s, described a covenant of fire and blood, sworn in secret, before a bone of the Apostle Peter. He claimed the men slashed their palms, mixing blood in a chalice, while Urban uttered words not found in any liturgy. The monk called it a rite of binding, of cause and consequence. The story was dismissed as folklore, until a second, unrelated letter emerged from the archives of Monte Cassino. Written by a Norman priest, it describes a vision he had just after the council. In it, 9 men sat at a table. Each wore a hood. Each held a knife. At the head sat a man with a golden cross, who spoke not of salvation, but of power, dominion, and punishment for betrayal. What was really promised at Clermont? Urban's public speech spoke of sins forgiven, paradise assured, honor won. But whispers of the blood pact suggest something far more calculated. Some historians believe the promise was this: those who swear the blood oath shall be kings in the new land, thrones, independence. For nobles who had exhausted their claims in Europe, the Holy Land offered a new frontier. Urban may have sealed their loyalty by offering not salvation but sovereignty. And this theory begins to explain what happened next. The First Crusade was not a unified army. It was a collection of forces, each loyal not to the church, but to their own lords. Raymond claimed parts of Syria. Bohemond took Antioch and declared himself prince. Godfrey captured Jerusalem but refused to be called king, only defender of the Holy Sepulchre, though his brother Baldwin took the crown soon after. Within years, 4 Crusader states appeared: Edessa, Antioch, Tripoli, and Jerusalem, all ruled by men who had been in Clermont, all carving out their fiefdoms from blood. The crusade became not a pilgrimage but a conquest, and still, some of them died horribly. Bohemond was captured. Raymond perished. The oaths, if they existed, did not guarantee safety, but they seemed to guarantee something more terrifying: obsession. Even after years of hardship, starvation, betrayal, these men pressed forward with unnatural fervor, as if compelled by something beyond mere zeal, as if held by a pact they could not break. One final piece of the puzzle emerged in 1972. Archaeologists digging near the ruins of Old Clermont found the remnants of an underground chapel, unknown on any map. In it, fragments of a stone altar, and a single rusted dagger. On the hilt, a Latin phrase barely etched: Vincula sanguinis, the chains of blood. Coincidence? Or was this the place where the blood was spilled? The Church has never commented. The Vatican archives remain sealed on most documents concerning the First Crusade's internal correspondence. And yet, the whispers persist. Was there really a blood pact? Or is this all a tale told in hindsight, myth layered over myth? Perhaps the better question is, why would so many sources hint at it if it were merely fantasy? Why would witnesses speak in fear and cryptic tones? Why would the Church avoid the topic entirely? Maybe the Council of Clermont was not the beginning of a holy war, but the execution of a long-planned political upheaval, a reshaping of the Christian world, a bargain between power-hungry lords and a desperate pope, one that promised land, thrones, and legitimacy in exchange for blood. Not just the blood of their enemies, but of themselves. As you listen now, you may wonder, why does this matter today? The Crusades are long over. The men are dead. The kingdoms they forged now lie in ruins. But promises made in blood rarely die with those who make them. They echo through wars, through history, through the very structure of power in our world today. And if the Church truly sealed a blood oath with princes in a forgotten chapel in Clermont, what else might have been promised? And to whom? Maybe it's not the facts we should fear losing. Maybe it's the truths we were never allowed to see. This was the blood pact of Clermont, and it was never meant to be remembered.